Shine bright, yeah, I'm Bobo and Cramer, and they're bringing the heat tonight. Talking New York sports, you know what I mean. Big boys and the kings of the sea. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Bobo and Cramer, yeah, the pimps are loud, taking on the world, and they're never gonna stop with the New York grit. They're rising to the top, from the Mets to the Knicks. They got all the scoop, pouring out the passion, yeah, they're leading the truth. Every episode party, grab your friends and cheer. In this podcast palace, we got the atmosphere. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Bobo and Cramer, yeah, the stand of the lost, taking on the world, and they're never gonna stop with the New York grit, rising to the top. Get loud. Tune in, turn it up, feel electric sound. With every single word, you're never gonna frown. From the Midline Giants to the Madison Square, Bobo and Cramer, yeah, this man can get it out. Whoa, whoa, Bobo and Cramer, yeah, the stand up to loud, taking on the world, and they're never gonna stop with the New York grit. They're rising to the top. Get alive. Yeah, the best in the house is where the legends play. Bobo and Cramer leading the way. Breaking plastic slides, shout it out loud. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town.
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, joined by my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine. I'm just excited that it's getting very closer to opening day already. I'm just pumped for this already. This has happened. But also, that Ranger game really left me like, again, another one of those games I'm shocked my TV survived that one. I threw an empty can at the TV. How upset I was at that one.
I wouldn't blame you for throwing anything at the TV after watching that disgrace of a game. And it's funny the way you started things too, because I wanted to kind of gauge where your head was at. Obviously the first thing that you said was opening days right around the corner. So I'm thinking maybe you were going with baseball, but you were right on track with me because this is exactly where my head is right now. The New York Rangers are, public enemy number one for me right now. They are like this has just infuriated me so much watching that game last night. So if you're not familiar with what happened yesterday at the Garden, the New York Rangers laid another egg as they end up losing the game in disgraceful fashion. So they lost to the Edmonton Oilers the other day at the Garden 3-1. And it was an annoying game. The Rangers couldn't get on track. But you know what? You kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt because the Edmonton Oilers are a really good team. The Rangers are just coming off a road trip. So you say to yourself, okay, maybe they just didn't, get their bearings yet back. Maybe, the Rangers are a mediocre team this year that we know. So, okay, maybe they had a bad night. However, going out there for a second consecutive game at home and playing the way that the New York Rangers did was absolutely unforgivable. What the hell is going on with this team where not only did they lose, they were down, Artemi Panarin scored a goal about 1 minute and 3 seconds into this game to put the Rangers up at 1-0, and that was the last good thing that happened in the game. Before the period was over, the Rangers had blown the lead and went to intermission 1-1. They allowed another goal to go down 2-1, and it was just chasing the Calgary Flames, who stink. By the way, the Calgary Flames are not a good team. And not to mention, the Calgary Flames were playing a back-to-back. So they were on the second half of a back-to-back with a should have been refreshed, rested New York Rangers team at home. And the only person that showed up yesterday was Igor Shesterkin, the goaltender, as he ended up keeping the Rangers in. It should have been a 10-1 loss yesterday. If you watch that game, the Rangers got outshot 35-13, but it wasn't even that close. When you were going into the third period, it was like 31-9. Like, it's just insane how bad the Rangers were. How are you a professional hockey team that went to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup of the Eastern Conference Final last year? And okay, we understand this team has undergone quite a bit of changes since that game ended in May of last season. However, this team is still good enough and still talented enough to make the playoffs, although they're doing everything possible to completely screw that over, Dan.
Yeah, it is just a disaster, that game. All I can say is one thing about this. The quote, do my impression of a lemongrass from Rich Lamb. Unacceptable!
Yeah, it is unacceptable, especially just like you said, when we were talking about this earlier, the rate, Dan, 35-13. How do you get outshot like that at home? You're playing a home game that basically right now every game for the rest of the season for the Rangers is a playoff game, and you can only get with basically your season on the line. 13 shots on goal. 13 shots on goal should be one period, and you should get more than that in a period. The Rangers got 13 shots on goal for the whole freaking game, and that is unacceptable on every level.
Yeah, I was just furious at how they did that. I would expect them to get a bunch more shots on goal at that during this game. I was just like completely shocked. Like, is this the same team? This has to be the lowest of lows they have been all year long. I didn't see them play this bad, not even in a game they lost in a blowout.
Yeah.
They had such a turnout this bad.
Yeah, man. And the thing is too, another factor in the frustration of this game yesterday is that they're playing the Calgary Flames backup goalie. So it wasn't even like, you had one of these incredible goalies go out there and just steal the show, and there's nothing the Rangers could do. And even if the Rangers, you could feel a little bit better about it if the Rangers lost that game 2-1 and had 40 shots on goal, but the goalie just went crazy and stopped 39-40 and, was on top of his game and was incredible. As annoying and frustrating as that would be, you could sit here and say to yourself, well, you know what? It just wasn't our night. The goalie stood on his head and the Rangers couldn't put one in. That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. That's the thing where you could sit there and be like, okay, I'm angry, but at least they played hard. They didn't even play hard in this game. 35-13. When you get outshot like that at home, people should be released. People should be fired, and things have to change with this New York Rangers team. I don't know what Chris Drury has in store right now, because right now, Dan, it doesn't. A lot of people have just kind of assumed that the Rangers were going to figure things out and make the playoffs. And I think me and you were both kind of in that camp that, okay, this hasn't been the best season, obviously, but they're going to figure out a way to make the playoffs, right? Well, let's be honest right now, Dan. The Rangers are doing everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen. Not only have they gone out there and dropped 6 of their last 8 games in the most crucial period of the entire season, they now sit 1 point behind the Montreal Canadiens, who stink, by the way. And not to mention, let's also put this on the side, the Rangers right now are only 2 points ahead of the crappy Islanders, who just traded their captain a couple of weeks ago and completely gave up on the season. This Rangers team only has 2 more points than the New York Islanders. Disgraceful. But even more disgraceful that they are now 1 point behind the garbage Montreal Canadiens. And the Canadiens have 2 games at hand over the New York Rangers. The Rangers now also trail the the Ottawa Senators for the number 1 wild card spot by 5 points. The Rangers also have played 2 less games than that team. So all the teams in front of the Rangers have played not 1, but 2 less games than them. So the Rangers, the path to the playoffs, man, is getting very, very difficult because if these teams win the games that they have to make up in front of the Rangers right now, we're talking about being out of the playoffs by 5 or 6 points. The Rangers have to win these games. I mean, they got 13 games left, I think, or 14 games left, whatever it is. You pretty much have to go 12-1 or 12-2 if you're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they just got to go on some crazy winning streak. They better go on a crazy winning streak. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be furious. And please don't put up a bad showing on Sam Rosen's last game.
Yeah, man. And let's not forget this too. The Rangers traded their first round pick to get JT Miller this year. Now that pick is top 13 or 14 protected. I forget which one it is, but it's right around there protected. So if the Rangers do finish, crappy in the standings and are among the top 12 worst teams, then they'll have a shot at that, Dan. But I mean, I don't even think that's going to be possible. I think there is a legitimate possibility right now in front of us that the Rangers don't make the playoffs and also lose their first round pick. Now, that's definitely possible. Right now, the Rangers would be picking 11th. So they would actually, believe it or not, be keeping their first round pick right now, according to tankathon.com. But the teams in front of them, or the teams around them too, are right there. So the Rangers could easily slip back out of that, miss the playoffs, and not have a first round pick. That would be an absolute disaster if that happens.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a real completely disaster that would be just make it even add salt to the wound. And
Say that again, man.
I want to see that happen. And the only saving grace is that they're going to have I think Miller's going to be under team control for another year or 2, right?
Who? Keandre Miller or
JT Miller?
Oh, JT's under contract for quite a few years. He's not going anywhere. He's under contract until I think he's on the same timeline as Mika. So I don't think we got at least another 3 or 4 years with him.
Yeah, yes, at least you're on. But I swear there have been certain trades that the Rangers should have made during the offseason. Like they should have traded Trouba during the offseason, I feel like.
Yep. And Kako. And they should have found a way to just unload those guys now. And I saw an interesting thing yesterday from Adam Fox too, who rejoined the Rangers earlier this week, and coming back from his injury, and they what's it called? Vincent Mercogliano, who covers the Rangers for USA Today and Lohud.com. You should check him out. He is a great read. Vincent Mercogliano got a chance to sit down and speak with Adam Fox. And he was talking about how this is the first time in Fox's career he hasn't been paired with Lindgren. Ryan Lindgren dealt to the Colorado Avalanche. And I thought Lindgren's response was very interesting because he said that he believed if the Rangers had a better record and were in a better position, that Lindgren would still be here. And he said, it's kind of the thing of having a crappy season is that, you're going to trade some guys like that. And I understand him saying that as a player. Maybe you kind of have to believe that. But Dan, to be honest, with the drop-off in play that Ryan Lindgren had this year, I think no matter what position the Rangers were in right now, I think Ryan Lindgren was getting flipped one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like he was going to get flipped one way or another. Would it have been in a package for a bigger move or something? It was probably going to happen.
Yeah, see, that's where my mind goes too. I think maybe he wouldn't have been flipped for a draft pick or something like that we saw him get flipped for. But yeah, I agree with you that maybe it would have been in a bigger package. So definitely with you on that, Dan. And now we turn our attention to Thursday night. That's the next time the Rangers have a chance to get things right and get this thing straightened out before. I mean, because we're knocking on the door of April right now, Dan. As me and you were talking about at the top of the show, opening day is a week ago. A week away. A few short days after that is April 1st. And we're going to be in an NHL and NBA playoff season. So
yeah.
we're getting there right now. And hold on one sec. Yeah.
By the way, I didn't meant to say this, but I got some big news to say about us that I received. Did you hear that? Did you hear that a Japanese TV network wants us to be the host of a New York sports talk show in Japan?
I heard that. I heard that it's gonna be it's gonna be called something like Super Happy Fun Hour or something like that, right?
Yeah. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. They want us to use the name Best Seat in the House, the best seat in the house, and it's gonna be big. We're gonna be a show on Japanese TV. How crazy is that?
There we go. That? All right.
I know right. It's gonna be crazy moving to Japan, living in Japan. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be an interesting new chapter, and I'm excited. It's gonna be interesting being the guy. We're gonna be the guys that are gonna cover all the sports in America to the people of Japan. All their love of like MLB and stuff. We're gonna be their source for that. That's pretty big news. And they also told us happy April Fool's Day.
That's right. Tune in to the show on April 1st to hear all the details for the new Mike and the Mad Dog of Japan, myself and Daniel Bobo Kerlin. So we appreciate everybody checking in on that. But Dan, the next time we have a chance to get this thing straightened out is Thursday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I got to tell you, after the last couple of times the Rangers got their asses kicked by the Maple Leafs, I'm not feeling too good about Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too good about that either. I'm just nervous as fuck. I'm just hoping against hope the Rangers win. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm offering Jabu some of the finest whiskey I could find. The finest whiskey I could find from the liquor store. I am literally offering Jabu an entire bottle of Captain Morgan, not just a Rangers shot glass of Captain Morgan, the entire bottle.
Yeah, the heavy duty kind, because that's what it's going to take to wash away the stink of this season.
Yep, the entire bottle and a cigar someone got me from the Dominican Republic. A very fancy cigar.
There you go. That's the only way to drown out the sorrow of this season so far. So Thursday night, back at it at the Garden against the Maple Leafs. So fingers crossed that the Rangers figure things out. And, speaking of figuring things out, Dan, the other team that plays at Madison Square Garden, our New York Knickerbockers, they figured things out on Monday night at the Garden. They came off a horrific West Coast trip where they only won one game against the Sacramento Kings, lost against everybody else, but it doesn't matter. Knicks came back home, still in a pretty good position in the East in respect to their playoff positioning, and they blew the Heat out. Early on in this game, it was looking a little iffy. The Knicks weren't really playing too good. The Heat were making some things happen, getting under the skin of the Knicks. We saw Tracy Morgan have that very concerning medical episode.
Thank God he's okay. I've seen that guy live. He is hilarious. I don't know if you've ever gotten to see Tracy Morgan live.
Yeah, I've seen Tracy Morgan. Yes,
I've seen him live. He is hilarious, and thank God he's okay. And I don't know why the fact that he was talking about the vomiting and that he was okay almost made me think of Anthony's impression of Tracy Morgan, like trying to like, I got sick. I threw up.
Yeah, man. And then the thing is though, he's saying that it was food poisoning, but I don't know about that because his nose was bleeding and everything too. So I don't know what was going on, but thankfully he's going to be okay because we all know obviously he had that He's got his health issues that stem back from the car accident he got in with the Walmart truck all those years ago. But he even doesn't have a bad kidney, so he's not in the best health. So the fact that he provided a health update and everything and said he's doing good, best wishes to Tracy Morgan.
Yeah, thank God Tracy Morgan's okay. That guy's hilarious. I was just rewatching an old SNL clip of him. Remember the Brian Fellows Safari Planet sketch?
Oh, it's one of my that's one of my favorite skits ever. That goat has devil eyes.
Yeah, I think I was just watching that one. I don't know why. Just wanted me to watch that because I just felt like because I was just reminiscing to someone about the days when Comedy Central was full of mostly SNL reruns and MST3K episodes. Which, man, I miss those days where you had SNL reruns because I got exposed to some early work of so many great comics and all those early SNL moments too that I would always hear about from relatives and stuff older than me and stuff. Getting to see some of this stuff, it was just hilarious getting to see this stuff. And I actually discovered Peacock has almost every episode of SNL. So I was I was just watching some of my old favorites.
Very good, very good. So and speaking of favorites, Dan, one guy that's working his way into a lot of Knick fans' favorites right now is Karl-Anthony Towns, who actually set the Knick record for most consecutive points in a game. The Knicks really turned this thing around when Karl-Anthony Towns, pretty much grabbed this game by the neck and scored 15 consecutive points to put this into a close game, into blowout territory. And, this guy, man, he's really starting to find his rhythm and his groove in the Knicks uniform, and as long as they could keep him healthy going into the playoffs, and obviously a lot of that hinges on getting Jalen Brunson back too, which we're getting closer to that date, the 2-week out date. We're about a week, maybe a little bit less away from seeing what the deal is with Jalen Brunson. But as long as Karl-Anthony Towns is healthy and they can get Brunson back, this team is going to be dangerous in the playoffs.
Yeah, I expect that, and I expect one heck of a playoff run for the Knicks, and dare I say it, possibly that big moment we've never seen in our lifetimes, and so many generations of Knicks fans have yet to be able to get to see. Could this possibly be it? And I will be shocked if that's one of those that I'm just always shocked when I see one of my teams with a championships. This is one of those that's going to be really shocking if it happens. I can tell you that.
Well, it's definitely going to be shocking if it happens because it is going to be a gauntlet to get through the NBA, especially from the Eastern side. And the Knicks, if you want to make a list of the best teams in the NBA, you could probably put the Knicks anywhere from 3 to 5 on that list. The Knicks, you could probably make an argument, are the 3, 4, or 5 best team in basketball. The two teams that we know are number one are the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the best record by far, and the Boston Celtics, the defending NBA champions. Those teams are 1 and 2. Put them whatever way you want, but it's probably Cleveland 1 due to their record and Boston 2. The Knicks are going to have to go through one of those teams in the second round and probably the other team in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Knicks are going to have a 2024 Mets level of going through the big teams. If the Mets had beaten the Dodgers last year, they would have been the first team ever to beat 3 division winners en route to a World Series before they even got there. Now, the Knicks are going to have to be the same thing, man. If the Knicks are going to, they're going to have to play maybe a crappier team in round 1. But by the time you get to round 2, and God forbid, if we're talking about getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, it's going to be a gauntlet, man. And the Knicks better be up for it.
Yeah, I can tell you they better be up for it. I'll be pumped to watch. I'll be pumped to watch that, and I can tell you, I just have a feeling there's going to be some just big moments that are just going to make me fall off of my seat during this playoff run. I'm calling it right there. There's going to be fall off of my seat moments during the NBA playoffs.
Well, let's hope you're right, man. From your lips to God's ears. And, the Knicks aren't getting any breaks from the NBA schedule makers, as the Knicks just came off that extended West Coast road trip we were talking about. They come home for one game on Monday night, and now they're already back here as me and Dan are recording this on Wednesday evening. The Knicks are getting ready to tip off at 8 o'clock against the San Antonio Spurs. And they're having this is the first of a back-to-back road trip where they're playing tonight in San Antonio, tomorrow in Charlotte. So I mean, Dan, it's this is just not getting any easier for the Knicks. They just come off this long-ass road trip. Now I know the Spurs and the Charlotte Hornets are not good teams, but when your body's all beat up and you're missing your top star, sometimes these things catch up to you. In a perfect world, the Knicks need to win both these games, but it wouldn't surprise me if they end up splitting just because of not only the shortness of their bench right now with minus Jalen Brunson, but just the beat up nature this team's probably feeling right now. And we don't even know if Karl Anthony Towns is going to play both games.
Well, hopefully they can somehow manage to muster up to win both games, especially the fact I expect that there's probably quite a bit of New Yorkers in the Carolinas. So I expect a few every Knicks fan in the Carolinas to be there at the game in Charlotte.
That's right, man. Got to show up, represent Knicks fans. One other good thing to focus on with the Knicks that I was reading the stats that came out just the other day is that ever since Mitchell Robinson's return to the Knicks lineup a couple of weeks ago, the Knicks actually have gone up from being basically a middle-of-the-road defensive team to having the second-ranked team defense in the NBA since Mitchell Robinson's return to the lineup. So, when you're thinking about that, Dan, the one thing the Knicks have going for them, because we know they can score. We know on a good night, the Knicks can go out there and drop 130 points on a team on any given night when they're hot. But the thing that's going to separate the Knicks in the playoffs is making sure that their opponent can't do that against them. You have to make it as hard as possible for these teams to score. Maybe let them max out at 100 points, but once you start getting a 110, 120, and 130, that's when things get out of control. So the Knicks have to hold this level of defensive play up going into the postseason because that's going to be something that could separate them from the pack.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's going to be a couple of key defensive plays that will play a factor if they're going to have that impact and get to where they want to be.
Yeah, and you can tell, you even see Tom Thibodeau's trust in Mitchell Robinson, where, and let's not forget that Joel Embiid intentionally injured this guy and cost him most of the season. So Joel, when you're home missing the playoffs this year because your team stinks and you're hurt now, I hope you are regretful of what you did to Mitchell Robinson last year and cost this man nearly a full year of his NBA career. But now Mitchell Robinson's back, and he's going to shove it up the ass of the NBA come postseason time, right, Dan?
Yep, exactly. I expect Mitchell Robinson to have some big moments that'll just live in infamy for Knicks fans.
Let's see some big blocks. Let's see some big rebounds, some big time emotion, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. Let's fucking go.
There we go. And it all starts tonight against the San Antonio Spurs, 8 p.m. tip-off, as me and Dan are doing this just over about a half hour away. So always nice to, see the Knicks feeling it again right now. And the Spurs, who are 10 games under 500, the Knicks should be able to take care of. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that one, Dan. And now let's turn our attention to a little baseball, Dan, as not only do we have Grapefruit League baseball going on with the Yankees and the Mets both embroiled in their schedules. The Mets, obviously, right now tonight are playing the Houston Astros in West Palm at the Astros Stadium. But the Major League season has officially started. Not surprisingly, the Dodgers won both games in Japan, but the Dodgers and the Cubs threw first pitch yesterday morning about 6 o'clock in the morning. And, I'm sure there was a lot of excitement in Japan, with Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani and Amaga, the Cubs lefty starter, Roki Sasaki also pitched today, Dan. But this is something that we have to talk about too on this, Dan. What is it's like these major league teams are still under the impression that the season doesn't start until about April 15th, because we saw yesterday Amaga go out there and throw 4 hitless innings. 4 on opening day. He threw 4 hit. He didn't allow a hit. He didn't allow a run, and he gets yanked because he's not built up to pitch deep into games yet. Yamamoto went out there and threw 5 innings, and everybody was like, "Holy crap!" They're patting themselves in the back that this guy finally threw 5 innings. Then today, Roki Sasaki, the big guy, everybody wanted Roki Sasaki in the offseason, right? Well, in his major league debut today as a starting pitcher, he threw 3 innings. 3 innings. Like, what are we talking about, Dan? How do they not have these guys figured out yet to get them extended by the time opening day rolls around? If opening day for you is March 18th or whatever it was for the Dodgers and the Cubs, that means you have to start a couple of weeks earlier getting these guys extended. It's ridiculous that this guy started the second game of the season and threw 3 innings. It drives me nuts.
Did they not get the memo that they were starting the season a little bit earlier than everyone else? Did they not get that memo that they were going to be during spring training? They were going to go to 2 regular season games, then go back to spring training games before they begin the rest of the season. Did they not get that memo? Because that just shocked me when I learned. I was just watching the highlights because I caught games when I got home at work. I arrived home. I turned on the TV. I was kind of drowsy, so it's kind of tough a little bit to watch because I was a little drowsy. But did they not get that memo?
It's crazy. It's crazy to me, man. I don't understand. It's like the planning in baseball just doesn't. I mean, it's just crazy, and it's even crazier to me for the Dodgers because the Dodgers, Roki Sasaki should be able to throw 5 innings rolling out of bed in the morning. He's 23 years old. He's a guy that his whole life has been destined to getting himself to the big leagues, getting himself to the Dodgers where he wanted to go, and being shot out of a cannon. Now this guy's throwing 3 innings in his major league debut against the Cubs.
That just shocked me. They better be throwing more innings once the season starts. That's all I could say. All right, I'll maybe let this pass a little bit because usually teams are like in spring training at this time of year, but I better not be seeing this tomfoolery on any team
But even so, but by this point in spring training, you should be throwing more than 3 innings. You know what I mean? Like we see guys that in their first spring start throw 2 innings. This guy's already had a couple of spring starts under his belt.
Yeah, this doesn't make sense because number one, I've seen in past years, during years that there's been a WBC, usually some of the players taking part into the WBC, especially the pitchers, start getting ready. The ones that are, and it even though it's very difficult to get pitchers to want to take part in it, the pitchers that usually take part in it start getting ready and amping up. They kind of begin their spring training a little bit earlier than the players who aren't taking part in WBC. So I've seen them be ready, and they've been ready. They've been ready for that. How I don't get why they weren't doing it this time. They getting into that mindset. They're playing 2 regular season games that they need to be ready for that and take those games seriously. That they need to be ready to go for the season.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, if you're gonna throw, look, and it's not like this is the first time there have ever been, regular season games opening in Japan. Obviously, me and you remember 25 years ago when the Mets did it, and 21 years ago the Yankees did it against the Tampa Bay Rays. This is something that's happened. It's also happened in recent years too, but I forget it. I remember it was the Oakland A's. A couple of
I remember in 2009. I remember 2019. Ichiro decided to retire after the opening series in Japan with Seattle. He played.
Yeah.
It was probably one of the more notable ones in the history of the MLB playing games in Japan when Ichiro had a nice little send off in his home country there as a major leaguer.
And it was still, and the thing is though, at least at that point, these guys were still ready to play a full game. Remember when the Mets did it? We remember seeing those guys throw 100 pitches. We remember seeing all these guys being ready. I remember, I forget which Yankee pitcher it was, through 7 innings. Like, you remember these things. We know these. That you're going to be starting games. My whole point is, why make it regular season games if it looks like spring training? Those 2 games that we just saw in Japan might as well have been spring training games.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing I suggest maybe MLB does, maybe to avoid teams to even wanting to do this, maybe do if they're going to do a series in Japan, do it at a different point in a season. I feel like might work better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you kind of, with the travel and everything, either have to do it early or you have to do it late. And you're probably going to do it early rather than late.
Yeah, but do it. They could do it somewhere remember how they did it when the Mets did the London series? That might work. I feel like that would be a better product. That would be inclined teams to not want to do what they did in this series.
Yeah, but the travel to Japan is literally double the travel to England. So it's a big difference.
Yeah, it's probably a big difference, but still. They need to do a better job, and teams need to be better prepared for this next time they do this. Because
nobody wants to see Roki Sasaki throw 3 innings. Like, give me a freaking break. It's a glorified bullpen session.
Yeah. Especially in a country where Japan. I watched this really great documentary showing how baseball's like a big deal in Japan, and just the whole thing about baseball culture in Japan. And these pitchers throw a lot of innings, and I feel like there was a bit of letdown from some of the locals who were used to that.
Yeah, they should be. There should be, man. And speaking of this, obviously, we were talking about how that looks like spring training. Well, let's get to some stuff that actually is spring training right now. We'll get into a little bit of our Mets and the Yankees before we close things out here today, Dan. I do want to, talk about some good news for our New York Mets, is that Starlin Marte DHing again tonight in the game against the Houston Astros for the Mets down in West Palm, like we were talking about before. But the fact that Marte, because there were a lot of people speculating that Starlin Marte is either not healthy or is going to get traded. And the fact that he is suited up, he's out there playing tonight, DHing in the lineup, and he's on track for opening day, those are all really good signs for the Mets.
Yeah, that's a good sign if Marte is back to full force. Maybe getting on base and maybe adding a couple of extra runs on the board with his speed if he's on full force.
Yeah, and it's just the fact, too, that, when the Mets are looking at their lineup right now, one place that could kind of be a hole is DH. But it could also be a strength if it works out. I mean, they have Jesse Winker and Starlin Marte, who you could play Winker against righties. You could play Marte against lefties. You could kind of balance them out based on how hot they are or whatever at the time.
It's
a good dynamic, Dan. Hold on a sec. It's a good dynamic to have. But when, you look at things and to have that option of Starlin Marte as a healthy, because he could have been a salary cap dump. You know what I mean? The fact that he's going to be here and he's contributing and he's in the lineup and looking healthy, the Mets haven't gotten over 100 games from him since the first year he was here. If they could get anything close to that, they're far ahead of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Another option I feel like at DH, I feel like Beatty could be DHing a bit.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Dan, because right now, Beatty doesn't really have a spot at DH if Marte and Winker are both healthy. They're going to get the bulk of the play there. But funny you mentioned Beatty, because he is in the lineup tonight, and he's actually also 2 for 3 right now, with a double and a triple. So Beatty is still looking really damn good in spring training. Currently hitting .333, 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. He doesn't have a homer or any RBIs tonight, but it just goes to show how good he has been this spring. He's playing second base tonight, and that's part of the thing the Mets want him to do. Even earlier in the spring, I heard Carlos Mendoza talking to Evan Roberts, and Mendoza said he wouldn't even mind Beatty playing shortstop as long as they got him some time, and it wouldn't be for an extended period of time. Like if Francisco Lindor got hurt and had to miss 2 weeks, Brett Beatty's not going to play shortstop every day for 2 weeks. But he was saying that, if maybe it's a blowout one way or the other, and it's the 7th inning, and you want to get Francisco off his feet for a couple of innings, they could stick Beatty at shortstop. Now they're playing Beatty at second base. Obviously, we all know Beatty could play third already, and they've used him in the outfield. So I think they're doing everything they can to make Brett Beatty force his way onto this opening day roster just to see what they have in him.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if he's hitting, they're going to find a spot for him, I feel like.
And he is hitting right now in spring. That's one thing you could say about Beatty is that he usually hits in spring. It's usually by the time the calendar turns to April when it starts to go south. But so we're going to have to see. I think the Mets are going to give Brett Beatty every opportunity because, another thing, actually, I didn't even have it listed in our notes here, Dan, but one thing we heard is, so obviously me and you were annoyed over a year ago in December 2023 when we found out that Ronnie Mauricio had gotten injured in one of those Dominican League games, which is still mind-numbing to me. The Mets even allowed him to play in. It's still over a year later, and you're still suffering the consequences of letting one of your top prospects play in the Dominican series. I really hope you guys liked what you saw, because it's cost this guy over a year of his development now. And where we heard a month ago Carlos Mendoza come out and say, the middle of March 15th, we have circled on the calendar for Ronnie Mauricio. Well, that date's come and gone. And the manager just came out the other day and said, we're not going to be seeing Ronnie Mauricio in spring training. So a guy that a lot of Met fans were even talking about potentially replacing Pete Alonso at first base isn't even an option to be on this roster. He's not even going to play one spring game this year, Dan. So what do you think about Ronnie Mauricio being out for who knows now?
This is going to be one of the biggest disasters if he doesn't come back. This is just going to be one of the biggest what ifs. It's kind of a shame that kind of does happen because he's one of the guys I've gotten to see in the minors. I got to see him in the Cyclones with a lot of the prospects these days, especially now that the Cyclones are now in a higher level of the minor leagues. They're now they for a while they were a short season A ball. Now they're full season high A. So I really get to see some of the big prospects now these days.
Yeah, man. And unfortunately, it looks like right now that's where Ronnie Mauricio is going to be staying at the prospect phase, because he he's at least going to be starting the year in AAA, and we're not going to be seeing him in spring training. So, and who even knows when he's going to start the year in spring in AAA? I'll tell you this much right now: from what we're seeing, I don't expect to see Ronnie Mauricio at AAA opening day in Syracuse. I think it's more likely that maybe midway through April we'll see him pop up in extended spring training somewhere down in Florida, and that's just a shame, man. It's still. We are going to be over 16 months removed from that injury. And for what? I still don't understand. The Dominican series? Why are you letting one of your top prospects play in the Dominican series? I just don't get it.
I just don't get it too, especially why make him play there and suscept him to getting an injury that you get playing on a turf field, because from what I heard, it was on fake grass. It was on that dumb fake shit.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right about that, Dan.
And I'm not a fan of fake grass when it comes to baseball.
Yeah, me too. I'm totally with you on that. So let's just hope that we see Ronnie Mauricio sooner rather than later, but that's not looking too good right now. But what is looking good actually is that Brandon Nimmo, who just about a week or so ago, we were hearing whispers that he might only be able to, be like a 90 or like an 80 to 90% of the time DH this year, which, as me and you were just talking about the DH spot a couple of minutes ago, I don't even know if he'd fit in there. That's going to cut into a lot of playing time for Jesse Winker and a lot of playing time for Starlin Marte too. But Brandon Nimmo right now, tonight in West Palm, playing left field, looking good, feeling healthy. So the Mets are starting to work him into getting back into the outfield, and that's what they need. Brandon Nimmo, obviously, he's still coming off that plantar fasciitis stuff that he had with his foot last year that really hampered him in the second half when he only hit 190 in the second half. It completely lost all of his power. But now Nimmo, who looked decent in the playoffs when he really gutted it out for the Mets when they needed him, him healthy in the outfield is a big plus, because when you think about it, you got Juan Soto in right, who's pretty good. Soto's not too bad. I mean, you see a lot of people, talking crap about his defense right now, and I think that's a little bit more overblown. Maybe in 4 or 5 years when he's in his 30s, maybe he won't be as good defensively, but I think right now he's pretty adequate for whatever it is, and he has a really good arm, too. I remember seeing that on opening day last year for the Yankees when he threw a guy out at home plate to end the game in Houston. So he's got a good arm at least. Now, obviously, with him in right, Nimmo, who's a pretty good, defensive outfielder when he's out there too, especially all his years in center field. You stick him in left, and then you have the tandem of Jose Siri, who, we've seen a little bit of in spring training, and Tyrone Taylor, who are both plus defenders. That's a pretty good defensive outfield.
Yeah, exactly. So I expect some in that field that's going to keep us in the game during the season.
Yeah. I mean, you want, especially, in a ballpark like Citi Field, you want outfielders that can go out there and track down these fly balls. And even if you're not, catching them, you can turn doubles into singles. You can turn singles into doubles. I'm sorry, you can turn triples into doubles. You can have these guys go out there and take home runs away if they're, we've seen Nimmo do that in the past. We've seen, the great defense of Tyrone Taylor last year. We've heard the great defense of Jose Siri, and we've even seen his ability to track balls down there in spring training too.
Yep, exactly. I got to see it in person that time when Nimmo robbed that home run, that game 2022 against the Dodgers, when that game when DeGrom pitched 8 innings, and we went, and the 9th inning we went to Diaz. Remember that game when Timmy Trumpet was played the Diaz's little Mount Walk Up song? I was at that game, and that was in that game the Nimmo made that robbed a home run in that game. I got to see it in person for that. I was there for that game.
That was the last good game of 2022. That was the end of the season in 2022.
Yeah, that was just, and that just makes me miss those days when we had pitching like that. Like the Crom.
Yeah.
That was that stadium was packed like that.
Well, Dan, you want to hear? You want to hear an interesting stat, actually, Dan? Since so there are 7 playoff teams that make the big leagues now, right? Per league. So if you go over in the National League since 2017, if you have a top 7 pitching staff, about 60% of the time, your team makes the playoffs. If you have a top 7 offense, like the Mets did last year, you make the playoffs about 90% of the time. So it's weird for guys like me and you who grew up Met fans. We love that starting pitching stuff. But you know what? The Mets might be better off now being one of these offensive first teams than just being obsessed with pitching. We were obsessed with the starting pitchers of, Harvey and DeGrom and Syndergaard and Matz and all these guys, Zach Wheeler, that we were churning out. And we got nothing for it. We got to a World Series, that one run, but that was it. We didn't get a ring. And, we still don't have a ring yet. But I got to tell you, if you look at all the analytics and everything, you got a better shot of winning a championship if you're a more offensive-minded team than pitching.
Yeah, exactly. I feel they got to do that. And at the same time, I just feel an inkling that the Mets, their priority at the trading deadline is if they're right there in contention, they gotta pounce on the opportunity to get an ace if
See,
it shows
but
up,
that's the thing too.
especially if it controls.
I think you're 100% right, but I think that is the thought process now that a lot of GMs go with, where, hey, we don't need to go out there and have 5 all-star starting pitchers. I think the way a lot of GMs look at it now is, hey, all we need to do is have a decent enough starting staff to keep us in it, and then at the trade deadline, we could go out there and pick up a guy that puts us over the top. You know what I mean? I think that is the way that a lot of these GMs are looking at it now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they need to do. And I feel like there could be like a Luis Castillo showing up at the trade deadline. It's gonna be, and it's gonna be I might have to keep an eye on and off of his starts. Like I'll be keeping an eye on his starts up until the trade deadline via the MLB.TV app, which I get a subscription to. Thanks to probably, I mean, you have to love that promotion that T-Mobile has that they give you free MLB.TV.
Yeah, well, I don't have T-Mobile, so I wouldn't know, but it is true though, Dan. You're gonna keep an eye on Castillo. I think a lot of Met fans are gonna do that too, but he's got 2 years left on his deal after this season, so it's gonna take a lot to get him. So we have to keep that in mind too. One other good thing too for the Mets before we move on to the Yankees and wrap things up here is that a pitcher who threw very well for the Mets out of the bullpen last year, right-hand pitcher Dedniel Nunez, is trending towards being ready for the start of the season. He was throwing live BPs, and this is a guy who we really haven't seen much to, but he's trending in the right direction. And if they could get him ready for opening day 2, that just makes this bullpen that much more dangerous.
Yeah, that's going to be another thing that's going to play a big factor is that bullpen. And another thing I feel has got to happen, Carlos Mendoza, they got to be able to have their starters throw more innings and not overuse the bullpen. Because I feel like the bullpen looked aside from Diaz, who looked like he was fine, but the entire bullpen looked zapped during the NLCS. They cannot let the bullpen get zapped.
Look, but by the time you get to the NLCS, you can't really knock it too much because we all know that the postseason these days have just become really a battle of who's got the better bullpen in a lot of games. But I think while Carlos Mendoza started off the year iffy with the bullpen, I think he finished really strong. I think the second half of the season last year, Carlos Mendoza was pushing every right button. I think he really got the feel for the bullpen and how to use it. And I think that's only going to get better this year.
Yeah, I feel like he's got to do more what he did in the second half than the first half.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. Because I think the first half he kind of knew that the starters had to maybe let them throw another inning, to maybe not have to use so many relievers. As long as he can do that both halves, that's going to play a factor. And I just have a feeling the Mets are just going to pull off. I mean, dare I say it, but that moment that's going to make me faint, or I actually, what do I say? It's unpredictable how the both of us are going to react if that happens.
No doubt about that, man. So only time will tell how that's going to unravel right now. And who knows, with the way the American League and everything is going right now, too, the National League, too, we could be seeing another Subway Series for the first time in 25 years, although it did take a hit when we found out a week or two ago that Yankees ace Garrett Cole would be undergoing Tommy John surgery and missing the full season. So, obviously, that, hurts the Yankees right off the bat. But I do want to get into a couple of Yankees points real quick before we get out of here, Dan. And Aaron Boone said that Clark Schmidt, who's been dealing with shoulder fatigue. Now, let's not forget, Clark Schmidt is a big part of this Yankees rotation this year now, but they're saying he will not be built up to 75 or 80 pitches by the time the season starts. So that does open the door for other guys with the Yankees like Carlos Carrasco or Adam Warren to make the team. Now, me and you were knocking the Dodgers and Cubs before for not having their guys stretched out to larger pitch counts, but I can't really knock the Yankees as much for this Clark Schmidt thing because he has been dealing with an injury. It's not like Sasaki and Amaga and Yamamoto and all these guys that have been completely healthy for the whole offseason. Clark Schmidt was dealing with this shoulder fatigue, so he was shut down for, a couple of weeks, which hurt his chances. So, that makes a little bit more sense if he's going to start the season at a lower pitch count. You know what I mean? Because he's dealing with the injury.
Yeah, I just have a weird feeling that the Yankees are going to have to rely on everything but the kitchen sink the first half of the season. And
yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think they did sign a pitcher named Kitchen Sink.
At this point, it wouldn't surprise me because it's like the old saying: if you throw enough shit against the wall, you got to see what sticks. And that is kind of what I viewed Carlos Carrasco as too coming into this, because we all saw Carlos Carrasco with the Mets 2 years ago, and he was not good. We all saw Carlos Carrasco with the Guardians last year, and he was not good. So the fact that the Yankees were bringing this guy in the first place, let's not take shots at Carlos Carrasco. He was at one time a very good pitcher. Even in 2022, when he was a little bit past his prime with the Mets, he still figured out a way to gut through the season and win 15 games for that 101 victory season Mets. But, you don't want to be relying on a 38-year-old Carlos Carrasco right now.
Yeah, exactly. And a pitcher that I feel like hasn't really adjusted to the pitch clock, I feel like. I said that some pitchers really aren't suited for the era of pitch clock. And I feel like Carlos Carrasco is one of those that just isn't suited for the pitch clock. And I'm almost definitely for sure if we go back in time, I don't think you'd find a pitcher you'd find Steve Traxel pitching in the major leagues today with this pitch clock era.
Oh, you got that right, man. The pitch clock would definitely be hell for Steve Traxel. But you've pointed out, and me and you've had this conversation before about Carlos Carrasco, and I think you are 100% dead on about that too. I think we saw a major decline in Carlos Carrasco's game with the pitch clock too. So it's going to be interesting to see if he could adjust to that this year for the Yankees, depending what role they're going to have him in. Maybe he's a long reliever. Maybe that'll help out with it a little bit. Maybe he enters the starting rotation. Who knows? But I do think that surprisingly for the Yankees, Carlos Carrasco being a big contributor is going to play a big role in that rotation this year now.
Yeah, and that I have to say, this does not feel like the kind of offseason moves the Yankees would be making if George Steinbrenner was still alive.
No, you're 100% right. It feels like Wilpon era Mets moves.
Yeah, I just feel like I feel like the ghost of George Steinbrenner is just haunting his son over these moves.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, how could he not be? He's probably he's definitely making a lot of noise 6 feet underground right now, rolling over in his grave, because this is not especially not only the fact, what do you think George Steinbrenner would think of if he found out the Yankees lost their best player, aside from maybe Aaron Judge, to the Mets? That would kill him in the first place. And then just to see the offseason they had, which, I do have to give them credit. I do like them bringing in Bellinger. Not as much, but I don't mind them bringing in Paul Goldschmidt either, who, by the way, is dealing with another injury right now. He had his back stiffen up on him, missed a couple of days, but Aaron Boone did say he'd be ready in a couple of days to rejoin the lineup. So at least that's good news for the Yankees. The other good news for the Yankees, though, is that former New York, the brother of former New York Yankee, his son, and former New York Met, obviously, Al Leiter, his brother Mark Leiter has a kid who's in the major leagues right now with the Yankees. And he was a big part of the Yankees bullpen last year. He's been dealing with a banged up back the last couple of weeks. He hasn't pitched in a Grapefruit League game since March 6th. However, he went out today and he threw an 18-pitch live bullpen session. And as you can see the quote on the bottom there, he said, if the season started today, I'd be ready. And that's got to be music to the ears of Yankee fans because there's going to be a lot of pressure riding on the right arm of Mark Leiter Jr. this year for the Yankees.
Yeah, there is. There's just going to be a lot of pressure for him, especially with getting some key outs in out of the bullpen. It's going to be
because
it's going to be the most pressure he's ever faced.
Yeah, because let's not forget too, no Clay Holmes in that Yankees bullpen is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, it's gonna really be. I think Yankee fans are gonna have to get used to saying they've never had to get used to getting very nervous and having medics on standby. It's the stuff that us Met fans have had to deal with over the years.
Exactly. Get used to them bringing a John Franco type into the bullpen.
Well, welcome to the club, you guys. We've had to deal with it most of our lives.
Exactly. We've had the Benitez's, the Francos, the Loopers. We've dealt with it before. So welcome to the club, as Daniel Bobo Curlin said. And on that note, Dan, I think that's a perfect place to call it a show. Thank you, everybody, once again for hanging out with us here at the Best Seat in the House podcast. But before we get out of here, Dan, do you have anything you'd like to plug for yourself?
Yeah, there's the one thing. Just hope you guys appreciated. Hope you guys figured out one of the things we said, which was a April Fool's prank. The other, my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC. Follow me on there. You're gonna have to check. You'll subscribe to our Patreon, and of course subscribe to my follow me on Instagram, Bobo718DK, and definitely our Patreon, $5. You'll get content on me. You'll get our exclusive early access to my YouTube video, our exclusive show, and some other exclusive content. Plus, you get Trackside Minute, which I'll resume. I've had to deal with so much stuff the last few days because of stuff going on with some family members. But I'll be resuming Trackside Minute pretty soon. Probably this week. Probably talking about maybe the last couple of weeks, catching up a little bit on it. But don't worry. I haven't forgot everyone about Trackside Minute, so you'll definitely have that. But subscribe to our Patreon. It's $5 a month. It's great little support for the show, and all the content we see here. And plus, you get to show up in the live little super chats, and keep getting the word out about our show. This way, we're close to being able to monetize our show.
We already are. we got monetized a couple of weeks ago, so we hit that.
You know who else is happy about this, bro? My mom.
Now we've been waiting to do a live show for that. We'll probably be doing a live show at some point. I would say one of the next couple of Saturdays, because we also wanted to do one for the WrestleMania. So we'll probably do one before that, just as like a celebration or something like that. Because we are now, too, just 9 days ago, on March 10th, was our 3-year anniversary of the Best Seat in the House podcast. So I want to thank everybody that's come along for the ride and helped us out over the last 3 years and watched us and laughed and cried and everything else that we've seen for our sports teams over the last couple of years. So I want to thank everybody for that. And you know where to find us. Don't forget, all of our audio podcasts go up on Spotify and Apple Music. You can check it out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to these videos on YouTube. It helps us out with the algorithm. We really appreciate everybody that's already gone ahead and done that. So for my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin, I'm Rob Kramer. This is the Best Seat in the House podcast, everybody. I will catch you next week. Have a great weekend.
All right. Push the button, Frank.